Good afternoon. Today we release the Government of Alberta's 2016-17 annual report. It's a detailed look back at what was a challenging year. The oil price collapse, together with the Wood Buffalo wildfire, reverberated throughout our economy. The Wood Buffalo wildfire was the costliest natural disaster in Canadian history. It compounded the effects of the economic downturn, took an estimated 0.6% off Alberta's real GDP. The disruption to oil production cost government about $300 million in lost revenue, in addition to the costs of firefighting and supporting displaced residents. The human cost is incalculable, and for many, it continues. The fire left an indelible mark on a community and our province. But the spark that started the fire also ignited another reaction. In the days and weeks that followed the evacuation from Fort McMurray, Albertans from every corner of the province opened up their homes and their wallets to help displaced residents. Governments from every level, municipal, First Nations, provincial, and federal, worked together to provide basic necessities to heartbroken residents, some who lost their homes and their jobs. The job is far from done, but the response to the wildfire reminds us, again, that we are always stronger when we stand together. And in difficult times, when natural disaster or economic downturn, it's government's job, first and foremost, to put people first. That was our focus in 2016, and it continues to be going forward. Our plan centers on 4 fundamental priorities. First, creating and supporting jobs by putting Albertans to work building infrastructure throughout this province. Second, making life more affordable for ordinary families by cutting school fees, capping electricity rates, and more. Third, strengthening the public services families count on, like health and education. And fourth, reducing the growth in government spending on our way to balancing the budget. On each of these priorities, the government took action in 2016 and continues to take action today. In the area of jobs, for example, our investments in much-needed infrastructure are sustaining thousands of jobs in construction, and in 2016-17 yielded completion of 83 new and modernized school projects. Progress on the final segment of the Calgary Ring Road, completion of the Anthony Henday in Edmonton, and twinning of Highway 63 between Fort McMurray and Grasslands. And completion of health facility projects in Edson, Medicine Hat, High Prairie, Edmonton, Lethbridge, and Red Deer. In addition to building new schools, hospitals, and roads, and transit, we supported job creators by cutting the small business tax rate by 33%, and introduced the Alberta Investor Tax Credit and the Capital Investment Tax Credit. We secured federal approval for the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the Line 3 pipeline. And through initiatives like the Petrochemical Diversification Program, we're getting more jobs and more value from our raw resources. On the issue of affordability, as important as it is to support the creation of jobs, it is also important that we help families make their paychecks go further. That's why we introduced the Alberta Child Benefit and expanded the Alberta Family Employment Tax Credit. It's why we froze tuition so Albertans can afford to upgrade their skills. It's why we protected essential social services that people turn to when they need support. And it's why this year we are building on our commitment to make life more affordable by cutting school fees and capping electricity rates. With regard to strengthening public services, our government also took action to ensure patients in our hospitals and kids in our schools were protected. It's all because of one simple value of our government. No child's future should be jeopardized because of falling oil prices, and no patient should be denied world-class care for the same reason. We have fully funded student enrollment growth in our schools to keep class sizes down, and we have provided health care with stable, predictable funding. With regard to cutting costs, We have acted to protect Albertans through the downturn. We have also taken action to reduce growth in government spending. In the last 2 years, we've limited overall operating expense growth to an average of about 3%, despite pressures from strong population growth and the economic downturn. That compares to annual growth of 4.6% between the years of 2009-10 and 2014-15. In addition, operating expense growth has dropped from what was projected at third quarter. Expense growth dropped to 3.4%. We got rid of wasteful spending, reined in the executive salaries of agencies, boards, and commissions, and canceled perks and bonuses. Our new compensation deal with doctors saved $100 million last year alone. We froze the salaries of managers in the Alberta Public Service, government agencies, and political staff. And we found another $250 million worth of in-year savings and expense reductions. With regard to recovery, last November I reported that the Alberta economy was turning a corner. I repeated this at budget in March and at our third quarter report. Although the path to recovery has had its obstacles, and not all Alberta families are feeling this yet, we're headed in the right direction. Since July 2016, 44,000 full-time jobs have been added and employment insurance claims have fallen. Alberta will return to the September 2015 peak of employment in 2018. Jobs are returning. Retail sales have recovered almost all of the losses incurred during the downturn. Manufacturing is surging, with food processing, wood product manufacturing, and chemicals doing historically well. And rig activity has doubled. Good signs and good jobs. You'll also notice that with the annual report, we consolidated the balancing pool into our reporting at the recommendation of the Auditor General. This resulted in a one-time $2 billion deficiency on our books that is reflected in the year-end deficit. You might recall that we also introduced a $1.1 billion accounting treatment in the third quarter update for the coal transition phase-out agreements. In both cases, neither accounting requirement represents an actual increase in spending this past year. But owing to higher than forecast revenues resulting from increased resource revenues and investment returns that were strong, the deficit elimination plan remains on track. In conclusion, we began laying a foundation for economic recovery during the last year, and we will carry this momentum forward. Alberta is now expected to lead the country in economic growth this year and next year. But our work is not done. The journey to recovery and a new foundation for prosperity continues, and our commitment will not waver. As we look around the world, the lessons are clear. Those places that protect and support working people, that invest in the 21st century infrastructure for a 21st century economy, and that put people first, will win the future. As we close off a very difficult year, the light on the prairies is shining a little brighter. And with a steady hand, we will continue to make life better for Albertans. That concludes my opening remarks, and I'm pleased to answer questions.
Sir, you talked about the eliminating the deficit plan. So I'm sorry, how many years before you actually eliminate the deficit?
6 years.
Okay, will we actually see a plan on how you actually plan on doing that?
We will present our fiscal plan as all governments have presented a fiscal plan, so you'll see that in 3-year increments, yes.
I'm sorry, when will we see that?
Well, you saw our budget in March.
We didn't actually see a plan there in terms of like an actual graphs or something showing us when you'll get down to a balanced budget.
The plan is to have smaller and smaller deficits year on year on year going out and balance in 2023. The plan is built on supporting Albertans through this recovery and to growth. The plan is built on investing across this province and keeping Albertans working. And the plan also is built on diversifying our economy.
When will we actually see that, an actual plan, detailed other provinces, I've seen it in the past here as well. Will you show us that next budget, for example, an actual plan to get the deficit?
We get closer to 2023 with the next budget, yes.
And we'll actually see a plan then? 'Cause you keep talking about a 6-year plan. I haven't actually seen anything to actually show how you're going to do that.
Well, what you see is smaller deficits, and we'll continue that on with the budgets, and that would have to be in the 2020-21 budget that's presented.
But how are you making smaller deficits? Because you've never actually said that.
How?
Yeah.
Sorry, how what?
You've never, ever, ever said exactly what your plan is to make those deficits low.
Oh, well, I think I have said that before, and it means we're bending the cost curve on expenditures.
Curves are already bent by, their very nature.
What is?
Curves, they're bent by their very
Oh,
nature.
I see what you're saying. No, we're intending and have shown that our expense growth is only 3%. It's under population plus inflation, which is which is about 3%. So going forward, we're going to stay under that, and we're going to see our revenues grow going forward. And we are doing that by diversifying our economy and by investing. And the economy is going to be repaired by 2019 in terms of what it was before the recession. So that's the plan, is to invest, to make sure our expenditures are under population plus inflation growth, and to see revenues grow at a higher level, and then use those monies to address our deficit, needing less monies for our fiscal plan.
You had $1 billion extra in revenue here. Critics are going to say that's $1 billion more than you expected. Why didn't we see the deficit go down?
We had some pretty good increases to investment income and to resource revenues towards the end of the year, but we also saw things like corporate and personal income taxes not perform as well as we forecast. We took in or consolidated on our books two entities. One, the coal transition payout costs, and the cost or the debt for the balancing pool. So when you balance all those out, we are on track with our deficit, and we are on track going forward.
Minister, in budget 2016-17, you said that spending, operational expenses would average 2% through the year. They've averaged 3%
Right.
over the year. Why?
We had population growth. We had people still coming to this province.
Well, we know this was
So, and we had a challenging year with more operational expenses for those people coming here. And we had a wildfire where we had additional expenses. It would have been great to be able to stick to that too. That was the plan. But we did a really good job in light of all of the things happening in this province. It was a really tough year to stay at 3. I'm extremely proud of the work of ministers and administration in what we've done. And we have shown that we are restraining spending. And going forward, we have a challenge before us, and we'll meet that challenge.
Why is it staying at 3 for the coming year? Why not back down to 2 like you predicted last year?
So our base grows operationally, and we want to continue to do the best job we can. We have an in-year savings exercise again going on right now. We will find and address the operational spending as we go forward. But it is a challenging year. We're going to rebalance our budget and get to somewhere that gets us below population plus inflation. And over the course of a 5-year, or on average, we're going to be doing better going forward.
Minister, you talk about a plan, you give us your plan to return, to balance, and to reduce the deficit, but you're talking in very broad strokes. And I think that what your critics are asking for is something very specific. If say, for example, I'm trying to balance my personal budget, maybe I spend a little less on shoes, for example, as an example. So why can't you give Albertans like a list of things, actions the government's going to take, besides the broad strokes, that you're going to take to reduce that deficit, or that debt, actually?
No, we want to get to the deficit first. We want to get to balance, and then we will start to work on our debt. The broad strokes are, frankly, what's important. Albertans need to know that we are addressing the deficit.
But how? But that's the thing that
I
people
think
want to know
I
how.
think I've explained that, Michelle. I said we're bending the cost curve going forward.
So how do you bend the cost curve?
By looking throughout all the ministries and making sure we're spending things on what we need to spend on going forward.
Give me an example of something that you've bent the cost curve on, this government's bent the cost curve on.
Physicians coming back to the table 2 years early and giving up $500 million.
I think the point that Michelle's raising, and I was trying to get at it as well, is you can talk about, cutting $18 million here.
Right.
On golf course memberships, and even $100 million when it comes to doctors. You're dealing with deficits in the billions of dollars.
It's true.
Will we see an actual plan with graphs and charts showing us getting this down to zero? When will we actually see something like, you're talking about 6 years, but
Right.
that's just you saying that. Well, can you give us something more specific?
No, I don't think it's just me saying that. I think it's, if you look at our fiscal plan, next year's deficit is smaller than this year's deficit. The year after that, the deficit's even smaller. That's what it will take to get to zero. And it's not without some challenge, I can tell you. The issues in Alberta are with regard to volatile revenues. You saw where, and it was, I was asked about the $1 billion in revenues that weren't anticipated. That's the challenge in this province. And just like that's a challenge, we are doing what we can to control spending. And it came in at 3% this year. Our plan was a little lower than that. But that's doing a great deal more than what was done in the past, around 4.6% on average spending. So we're showing great restraint. My view is departments are working with very little growth, but we're still growing as a province. And we have taken a 2-year recession in this province, which contracted our GDP, our economy by 3.5% 2 years going. So these are not simple things to organize or be involved with, but we are doing a great job under some difficult situations.
One of the plans you had to up employment, get people back to work and that kind of thing, was increasing infrastructure spending. But in fact, you're spending less than, $1.9 billion less than you thought you were going
That's
to.
right.
So how do those two things gel? How can you be creating jobs when you're actually spending close to $2 billion less than you were supposed to do so to create said jobs?
Well, first of all, I want to say that all of the money for infrastructure spending will get spent. So the difficulties in getting some of that money invested this year had to do with partners who have some responsibilities in getting their projects up and running too, and approvals for. So there was some challenges there. There was a wildfire, frankly, that took attention away from capital investments in building, and we're not going to apologize for that. There was also some difficult climate conditions and soil conditions. So putting all those things together meant that there was that lapse of $1.9 billion, but it will be spent, fully expended on capital over the course of our capital plan. And the jobs that are going to be seen as a result of that will happen.
Are you at all concerned that part of your plan to balance the budget is recovery and resource revenue? You're budgeted this year at $55, right? You haven't seen it above, I think we're back above 45 today. But are you at all concerned about kind of the trend we're seeing in the first 2-3 months of this fiscal year?
So regardless of the price of oil, we're going to deliver the programs and services that Albertans need. But obviously, we're watching that very closely. We can say that, I can say that I'm concerned about developments in the United States and the glut of oil. But that doesn't make anything change. What we're going to do, of course, is we're going to take the actions we can take action on, and that includes the investments across the economy and diversifying the economy and supporting the economy to diversify so there's less volatile resource revenues or support on that or reliance on the volatile nature of resource revenues that come from oil. But we have done several things that will hold us in good stead, and some of those, I'll give you one of those, and it's the risk adjustment we put in last year's budget, and we have put again in this year's budget, that mean if we don't achieve the $55 over the course of the fiscal year, which takes us to March 31st, 2018, then we can risk adjust it for a portion of that. We're only 3 months into a year, and so we will watch and we will wait and we will look at the oil as it goes forward this year.
Could that change your 6-year plan though? Because, pretty hypothetical, but, I mean, does your
in terms of balance, yeah.
How dependent is it on price being forecast?
You know, that's hypothetical to a degree. The work we can do, we're going to do to get to balance. We can't control the price of oil. We look at prudent and cautious estimates, and so I'm fairly confident over the course of the year we'll get to where our forecast was, and we've risk adjusted our forecast.
Let's move to the phones now. Operator, can you put through the first caller?
Our question comes from Don Braid with Calgary Herald. Your line is open.
Are you there, Don? All right, I was that interesting.
Operator, can you put through the next caller?
Our next question comes from Jeffrey Morgan of the Financial Post. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'd like to state two, and if I can. Number one, you mentioned bending cost curve on spending. I wanted to ask if that will include canceling PPA agreement balancing pool, because the balancing pool obviously took a $1.9 billion bite out of your revenues this year.
No, we're not going to be canceling PPAs. That's the job of the balancing pool. The balancing pool is an independent agency that makes decisions about how to manage the PPA on their own, and they offer electricity to the market on their own. We don't do that at the Government of Alberta. What we've done is that we have taken their debt on because there was a kind of a view of the AG that we had financial control of the balancing pool. But all we've done is consolidated them. We are not taking any actions with regard to their activities.
Okay, well, the annual report shows that the province was deemed to be in control of the balance.
Yeah, financial.
Financial, but not operating.
That's right.
Okay. The second question is, what month in the last year did economic activity in the province bottom, and has it been recovering since that time? With the current drop in crude prices, are we going?
Yeah, that's the question you maybe have to focus direct to administration later. But mid last year is when we started to see the turnaround occurring generally in job growth, in other economic indicators. But I'm sure our economists can answer that more specifically.
All right, let's come back to the room then.
I just had a follow-up on Tom's question, actually, about oil prices.
Oh.
You are quite reliant on those. You've been very critical of the
You have quite the, sorry?
My accent is strong. You've been quite reliant on the oil prices growing to come back to budget. You've been very critical, though, of the PCs being super duper reliant on oil money and that kind of revenue. So how is this any different from what previous administrations even did?
How have we been quite reliant? Just because of the budget line that shows where oil's going to be on forecast?
You've also mentioned it a good number of times here today, like, well, the oil price, that's going to come back and we're going to see some money coming. Oh no, Alberta's terrible because the oil price really sucks right now. Like, you can't keep bringing up the oil price and then...
I think he did. You asked me about the oil forecast.
Even your opening line in your news release said low oil prices.
That's like
All right.
3 paragraphs with
All
the
right.
executive summary.
Oil forecasts are what oil forecasts are. We don't make those at the Government of Alberta. We look to the market and find out what they are. And then we are cautious and prudent in terms of what we introduce for our budget forecasts. This year, though I'm supposed to be, this year in 2017, we took the lowest of those forecasts and price adjusted it or risk adjusted it at $500 million. So I'm not sure what your question is. That's how we did it.
Are you over relying on oil here
Oh.
as a recovery?
No, I recognize it's a volatile commodity and a volatile price. We have risk adjusted it because we know that it goes up and down a lot, and you can see this year where, you know, it changed drastically in budget 2016. So I don't think we're over relying. We're keeping our expenditures to about 3% this year, and we have plans to try and bend that even less. We know that with a recovering economy, not just reliant on oil alone in terms of the oil sector pushing that along, but we're trying to push it along in a diversified way. We know that growing corporate and personal income tax will help.
You mentioned already, trying to think of jobs. Of course, this document last year was the jobs plan.
That's right.
I think that we saw figures saying that there was 44,000 jobs created between July and March. But year to year, March to March, there's actually a net loss of 31,000 jobs. So would you call it a good plan if you actually still managed to lose 31,000 jobs?
The economy lost 31,000 jobs. Government is doing what it can to support the creation of jobs and the investments in our province to keep people working. So I think we're doing a pretty good job on those fronts. And by 2018, we'll be recovered in terms of the number of jobs that were lost.
I think we have time for one
Sorry,
more question.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, if you hadn't done what you had done in terms of spending money, investing money, infrastructure.
How many fewer jobs would occur?
Exactly.
I don't know. But I can find that out.
Thank you.
The Sturgeon refinery overrun of $800 million. Is this a concern to you? Do you think this is becoming a bad risk for the government, this whole deal, or do you still fully support the project?
You know, we look forward to seeing this project have positive effects in our economy when it's completed. And so I'm committed to seeing Phase 1 through to its completion and then see it get up and operating. And I know that Albertans for a long time have been saying that our raw resources need to be upgraded here, and this is a partial upgrade of those.
Do you think this is a good deal? Looking at the way it is now and the way the oil price is, like, are taxpayers gonna be stuck holding the bag here?
No, what we need to see done is Phase 1 completed and the operation get up and running. And we need to start seeing bitumen or dilbit upgraded. And once it's upgraded into diesel, you know, there's a better return on that product.
One of the partners wants out already.
Who does?
One of the partners wants out already. They're looking to sell off already, and it's not even up and running yet. That doesn't give you any pause about maybe where this is going.
I'm sorry, I don't know what department you're talking about.
Sorry, Northwest Refining, one of the
The
partners.
partners.
It's
Partners,
not
yeah.
department,
I
partners,
love
yes,
this.
wants out
You
already. Does that
got
give
an
you any
Australian
pause about-
accent too.
It's that Fox Creek accent,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would think that the actions of a private company are not something I can take anything to do, you know, I can take any responsibility for. What I know is we want to see the Phase 1 completed and we want to see operations start.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there.
For Alberta to commit to Energy East pipeline?
Sorry, you're going to have to get a little louder.
Sorry about my accent. So Alberta committed to
Alberta
sending,
committed,
to
yes.
sending products through the Energy East pipeline. Why was it important to do it?
Now, I'm not sure how we jumped to Energy East from the Northwest Upgrader.
No, it's a separate
Well,
question.
in the background document.
Oh, in the background document? Sorry, you'll have to talk to officials. I don't know that particular aspect of the background.
Ministry of Energy. Thank you very much.